We have to learn a lesson as Republicans in Congress that while it's difficult to lead the country at this day and time and the serious problems we're in, it takes intestinal fortitude. It takes the willingness to do the hard work. And it's time for us to do the hard work. Otherwise, our country is not going to be the same country we grew up in, Sean, and we already know that full well. But it's going to continue down a road that's going to be something much, much worse. This is the pink slip. Whether it's a few weeks from now that we vote him out, 3 months from now we vote him out, or we essentially say, Mike Johnson, you need to be prepared. You will not be Speaker next Congress if we are able to keep the majority next Congress. That is what I'm saying.
All right, guys, here we are, Tuesday. Woke up today to a very tragic situation in Baltimore. You've obviously probably seen it all. This cargo ship running right into one of the columns in the bridge. Tragic loss of life, clearly. Cars going off the bridge. Who knows what else has occurred? Thoughts and prayers are with the folks that are wondering where their loved ones might be. Hopefully, we continue to pray for them and to pray for their families if they're dealing with this situation. But obviously a lot to get to in the next couple of days and weeks as far as why this happened. The effort today was on search and recovery and rescue. And then we'll have plenty of time to understand why that cargo ship hit the column. Obviously a lot of investigation that will have to be done, number one. And then number two, and this is obviously the third phase of this, is how do you rebuild this? This is a decent sized artery around Baltimore, right? So you've got 95, 695, 895. This really is going to impact travel and commerce because the port of Baltimore takes in a ton, obviously, than traffic. So there's a lot of implications of what happened today. And I think over the next, days and weeks, we'll have a lot more to break down as far as what happened, why it happened, and where we go from here. But as I said, politically speaking, yesterday, great day for court for Donald Trump, took this $500 million bond that was due. The appeals court drops it down to $175. Trump says he's going to pay it off in cash. Wow, that's a nice chunk of change to have. But this doesn't get him out of this just sets aside money while he goes to appeal the case, right? So the judgment is still the judgment. And I guess on appeal, that's part of what they will be fighting. But it was good for them. The other case that he was fighting, the Alvin Bragg case about Stormy Daniels, is a bookkeeping case. They're going to have jury selection and start the case on April 15th. That's not the greatest news for him. But of all the cases, this is the one that most people thought wasn't as big of a deal. So whatever. But on the flip side, Truth Social starts trading today. And they're already saying that, at least in what they think the stock is going to go for, is like the $40 range, that he went from being probably just over $3 billion netting from this deal, probably closer to 4 or north of that, depending on where the stock is. You got to hold on to it for 6 months. That's part of the deal. And if you were to sell it off, there's questions about how that would affect the valuation. But he immediately jumped up on the Bloomberg and Forbes world's richest people because, it just happens to be that when you add $3 billion to $4 billion to your net worth, you get to jump a few notches on the world's richest person list. So good for him. You think about all that money that people just made overnight. Anyway, it's interesting. It's great for him. Today, we're going to talk to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Before we do that, I just want to remind you, please take the time to subscribe. I cannot tell you how cool it was yesterday to see that number. We're just a few hundred people short of 100,000 on YouTube. And considering where we started in August of last year, because of you guys spreading the word, sharing this with friends and colleagues, please take the time right now. If you haven't subscribed, if you're your first time here, subscribe, please. Do it over at Rumble, Apple, Spotify. It's so helpful to just, even if you don't listen every day, subscribing helps us when we talk to people who want to sponsor the show. It shows growth and interest in the show. Please subscribe. And then more importantly, whatever you did the last 24, 48 hours, please continue to do that because we've seen huge growth. And I think a lot of that is some of you guys just sharing it with friends and family, saying, please go to Sean's show and subscribe. Again, if you can't watch every night, I get it. but those subscriptions help us big time. Hit the notification button because we do live events as we did on Sunday night. We'd love to have you on board, especially as we get into the convention and debates, etc. That's going to be super important. So hit that subscription button right now. As I said, Marjorie Taylor Greene is with us today. She offered a motion to vacate after the House passed that astronomical 1,000+ page bill that, helped us a little on the edges for border, but then had a huge Christmas list of things that for the Democrats, especially in the LGBTQ world, which somehow made it into a Department of Defense and Homeland Security bill. We'll talk to all of her about that later this week. Chairman of the RNC, Michael Whatley, he's going to be with us. Chicks on the Right, they're going to be with us. We got a lot of great guests coming up. That's, again, why you hit that notification button. Before we get to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we're going to find out why she filed the motion to vacate the Speaker's office, Mike Johnson. She filed that motion. She hasn't pulled the trigger to ask for it to come up for a vote. One, when will she do that? What will it take for her to do that? I'm going to ask her all of those questions and explain how we got here, why we are not fighting harder for the border. Ugh, it kills me. I'm going to ask her those questions. So we're going to get into it with Marjorie Taylor Greene, Georgia Congresswoman. Before we do that, I want to share with you two of the great sponsors that make this show possible because of the growth, because you've been subscribing. So I want to hear from them, then we'll jump into it with Marjorie Taylor Greene. When crisis hits, when an emergency hits, will you be prepared? I know I will, because I have a Patriot Power Generator 2000X in my house. And you can too if you go to 4patriots.com/Spicer. 4patriots.com/Spicer. When the power goes out, whether that's a day, a couple days, a few weeks, maybe even a month, think about all the challenges that we face to our power grid, natural disasters and emergencies. You want to be ready. And with the Patriot Power Generator 2000X, you can power your refrigerator, devices, computers, tablets, phones, you name it. All the things that are important to you, your family, that can be taken care of. And you can bring the Patriot Power Generator into your house. No fumes, no gas, no noise. It's perfect. It's portable, and it charges on solar panels that come free with it. You don't have to worry about reloading it, bringing out gas, getting it filled, the fumes, the noise. No, the Patriot Power Generator is fully portable. It can go into your house. You can put it in your car, drive it somewhere, helping out a family friend. And again, it's completely powered by solar panels that come with it. So go to 4patriots.com/Spicer so that you are ready in an emergency or crisis. All right, if you're an animal lover like I am, I want to tell you about the great work of Delta Rescue. And if you go to deltarescue.org, you can check it all out right there. There's great videos. They show you what they do. It's a no-kill sanctuary. Notice that I didn't say shelter. Animal lovers, you're used to going to the shelter to rescue, right? Leo Grillo founded Delta Rescue as a no-kill sanctuary for life that dogs, cats, horses, and other animals can get the care that they need, the veterinary care, the nutrition care, as a place to run free, to enjoy the rest of their lives. But Delta Rescue only exists because of the contributions of people like you and me. $5, $25, $100, $1,000, a couple thousand, whatever you can spare if you're an animal lover. But more importantly, Leo Grillo, when he founded it, wanted it to be an enduring mission, something that went on well into the future. And to do that, we're asking people to check out deltarescue.org and go to the estate planning kit. So if you can make a contribution, great. But also go to the estate planning kit and see if you can make Delta Rescue part of your estate to help make sure that that mission endures forever. Go to deltarescue.org, check out the great work that they do, make a contribution, and then download that estate planning kit to see if you can make it part of your estate. Congressman, always good to see you. Thanks for being back with us.
Thanks for having me on today, Sean.
So obviously, you know, the big news last week was the House finally passed fiscal 24 spending that started in October of last year. I mean, we're already dealing with fiscal year 25. We wrapped up 24. You were not happy about it, I think is fair to say, and afterwards said, maybe we need a new speaker. Walk me through what your thinking is, where we are now, and where you see the way forward is.
Yeah, thank you for letting me explain. First of all, I want to say I support our Republican majority. It's extremely important to me. As a matter of fact, I support our majority so much. I'm one of the few members of Congress that has paid all of my dues to the NRCC and then hundreds of thousands of dollars more than that.
Can you just stop for 1 second? Explain. That's that is such a. I apologize for interrupting, but what does that mean? How many members of the conference do what you do? Because this has been a sore subject for a lot of members. I want you just to explain to viewers what that means, what you just said.
So what that means is every single Congress, each Republican member of Congress has to pay their dues to the NRCC. And when we pay our dues to the NRCC, that helps us fight. That helps us fight every single battle against the Democrats. It supports Republicans getting reelected. It helps support us win the majority for next Congress. And so it's extremely important for all of us to pay into the NRCC to basically be able to win. And winning is so important because that gives us the speaker's gavel. That gives us control over every single committee in the House. That gives us subpoena power. And that gives us the ability to govern at the federal level in the House of Representatives. Very few members of Congress, very few Republicans pay their full dues. It can take the entire Congress to pay them as they raise money and then ask donors to help support them in order to pay their dues. I am one of the few Republican members of Congress. I have paid all my dues. I paid it at the beginning of this Congress because I was so excited for us to hold the Republican majority. And because I believe in our majority so much, I'm supporting our full conference to hold the majority again next Congress when hopefully we have President Trump in the White House.
Okay, so that's important context. The NRCC is the campaign arm. You pay in, which, as you point out, and that's why I wanted to make sure you explain this. A lot of the members talk about the importance of majority, but don't maybe pay their dues to the NRCC, which helps grow the majority and maintain the majority and helps the more vulnerable members to their campaigns. So I want you to continue, please. What you just laid the context out. We passed this bill. You expressed concern. Why does all that matter?
It matters because our bills that we pass are our actions, and our actions are more important to Republican voters and our country as a whole than our words. And for decades, Republicans have campaigned and made promises to the American people, promises to the Republican voters, and promises to their district that they never follow through with actions. And everyone has watched our majority, this Congress, basically fall apart and fight with one another. And I have wanted so much for our Congress, our majority, to deliver on the promises that we made to America when we took this Congress. We promised that we would pass single appropriation bills. We promised that we would follow regular order, meaning that we would have 72 hours to read thousands of pages that are in bills that we have to vote on. We promised that we would not bring big government spending bills under suspension, which actually suspends all the rules. We promised the American people to be completely transparent. All of that has fallen apart. America watched all of us go through a great battle with one another after Speaker McCarthy was ousted by 8 Republicans that joined the Democrats to vote him out. That happened after Kevin McCarthy passed a CR, which continued government funding. We elected Mike Johnson at the end of October. Since Mike Johnson has become Speaker, he has passed 3 CRs, Sean. He had all of November, December, January, and February. He had 4 months to finish the appropriations process that we were mostly through with. Kevin McCarthy had passed 7 appropriation bills. We only had 5 more to do, and we could have done them in single appropriation bills. But Mike Johnson waited all the way until Friday, which was the government funding deadline, and forced us, the Republican conference, to vote on the second half of an omnibus. It was 6 appropriation bills packaged into one. After only giving us 1 day to read the bill that was 1,012 pages. But the worst part that I think is the most egregious is he passed it under suspension and did not allow us, the Republican majority, to vote on any amendments to make changes to this Chuck Schumer Democrat-led government funding omnibus. It was a complete failure. It was basically an attack on our own conference. So he forced, think about this. This is what people need to understand. Republicans, all of us were forced to choose, do we want to pay our military soldiers or do we want to stay with our moral and very important social issues like no funding for abortion. This bill contained funding for abortion clinics that provide abortions up to full term. And that is laid out in many of the outlines the summaries that have come out of this bill. This bill contained funding for the trans agenda against children. It contained funding for DEI. It contained funding for the FBI's brand new headquarters after the FBI has raided Mar-a-Lago and targeted many Americans. It contained full funding for the Department of Justice that's been weaponized against President Trump, pro-lifers, parents that were trying to hold their school boards accountable. This was full funding for Joe Biden's wide open border policies. And this happened when the video was on loop of illegal aliens, military-age men running over Texas National Guard and the Border Patrol agents. And he didn't allow us to vote on any amendments to make changes to this bill, to add in the Laken-Riley Act, to try to add in parts of HR 2, to try to make any changes to take out abortion funding. And so our conference, and you have to understand this, Mike Johnson, his responsibility is the care of our conference. It's to help us get reelected. He totally violated that by forcing our conference to simply choose yes or no on this bill intact as it stood without making any changes. He forced Republicans to walk the plank for him, but it was really walking the plank for Chuck Schumer and the Biden administration. And that's why I filed the motion to vacate.
Okay, yeah, and I want to break this down in chunks because this is a ton of information in terms of what's in the bill, the process, and then Mike Johnson as speaker. So let's go back for a second. Among the bill, there's what they call cardinals. So you've got the chairman of the Appropriation Committee, and then the subcommittee chairmen are referred to as cardinals. They oversee a chunk of the money. Robert Agerholt of Alabama is one of the cardinals. He voted against the bill, and he's pointing out a lot of what you just said. Senator Casey of Pennsylvania put in $400,000 in funding for the Mazzoni Center, which includes LGBTQ services, advertising, a fundraiser for drag queens and kings, burlesque performers, and other services as young as 14, stating that patients under 18 can receive confidential care in sexual and mental health without parental position. Regardless of whether or not where you come down on that issue about trans and LGBTQ, why is the federal government paying for that in Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania wants to fund it, or wherever this is, the Mazzoni Center in Pennsylvania, that's up to their taxpayers as far as I'm concerned. If you want to fund that, and you live in Philadelphia, wherever the heck this is, or Pennsylvania, but why are federal tax dollars as a principle going to something like this? How is that a federal issue?
It's not a federal issue. And I would argue this, I don't really care about what anyone's sexual choices are. That's completely their private business. But American taxpayers do not want to fund drag shows and the trans agenda on children. And that one said specifically, it goes to as young as 14 years old. I mean, that is an issue that crosses the political aisle. It's approximately 80% of Americans do not support the trans agenda on children. Let kids be kids, let them grow up, and then let them decide what they want to be as adults. This should have never been in this funding bill, especially when America's over $34 trillion in debt. This isn't ordinary pork. It's outrageous.
Yeah. So let's, and again, I want to get to Speaker Johnson and your motion to vacate in a minute. What I want to know and what frustrates me, and I think frustrates so many Americans, is kind of the point that you made before. We've known this train was coming for 4 months, right? And then we waited to the last second and waited and said, oh, if you don't fund it tomorrow, the military and the Department of Homeland Security shut down and government shuts down. So vote quickly, vote yes, and then you can go home for your Easter break. If Marjorie Taylor Greene was Speaker of the House, what would you have changed about the process?
What I would have changed is the minute I became Speaker of the House in October, I would have diligently worked to finish the government funding process. And I would have kept to the promises that we made in the beginning of our Congress. Single appropriation bills. Those could have been done before Christmas, Sean. It should have never carried on into 2024. I would have made sure that we finished that job. We would have not left Washington until we finished our work. Then we would have passed those bills. I would have also made sure that border security was number one, because that's the number one issue in America, is the invasion that's happening every single day. I would have forced that issue with the White House. See, there's no excuses here, Sean.
Can I stop you there? You just put your finger on my biggest frustration. Everyone who watches the show every night knows that I say this. This is an issue that should transcend or shame everyone on the left. People are dying, fentanyl's flowing in, terrorists are coming in. Every single person from the director of national intelligence to the chief of the border patrol says that we know that we're getting bad people coming into this country that want to do us harm. We know that drugs are flowing into the country. We know that women and children are being trafficked. What I regret more than anything is the lack of leadership in the House that says this is the hill to die on. This is America being invaded. This is where we stand and show the American people what we're all about.
You're absolutely right. And the American people completely agree. It's the number one issue across the aisle all over America. And this is the one place that Mike Johnson should have fought. This is where we had power, the power of the purse. Yes. The government funding is where you can draw the line. And we could have picked this one issue. And it's the one issue we should have picked. Laken Riley was murdered just approximately a month ago here in Georgia. It rocked not only my home state, it rocked the entire nation. We've also seen stories of women being raped by illegal aliens. We're seeing stories of illegal aliens squatting in people's homes, taking over their homes. We're seeing a video coming from TikTok where a man in some other country is giving directions on how to invade America and how to take Americans home with squatting and squatting rights. We're watching our Border Patrol agents literally being run down, Texas National Guard being run down by military-aged men. And then this bill, okay, not only did he not force changes and force border security in this gigantic $1.2 trillion government funding bill, there was a provision in there that added almost $700 million to house, feed, and care for illegal aliens that have invaded our country.
So let me, one at a time, pose to you two arguments, play devil's advocate for a second with you, and I want you to answer both. The first is this. Well, Speaker Johnson has a 2-seat majority. It is now smaller, will be smaller because your colleague from Wisconsin has decided to step down early. And therefore, Speaker Johnson must do the following, because if he doesn't do it under suspension, Republicans will never agree, and therefore that's how he must operate. How do you answer that?
I think that's a great question. Thank you for asking. We're at risk of losing the majority in the House, and we're at risk of Democrats controlling the majority, and that comes on the heels of Republicans resigning and leaving early. It's a math problem. This is not a Marjorie Taylor Greene motion to vacate pressure problem. This is simply Republicans leaving Congress early. That puts us at the greatest risk of losing our majority and it falling in the hands of Democrats. Yes, government funding is our constitutional duty. That's the House of Representatives. It is our job to fund the government. And again, this comes from failure starting when Mike Johnson became Speaker of the House. You see, before Kevin McCarthy was thrown out, we were working through our appropriations. We were fighting it out in our conference over how to fund the government, but we were still working through them. And I would argue some of the most conservative appropriation bills were being passed, 7 of them. But when Mike Johnson became Speaker, everything stopped. There was never a week we were in session where there was any attempt to try to fund the government. And that is where the failure happened. But now that Mike Gallagher has announced his departure date being after his district is able to hold a special election and replace him, giving them a representative in Congress, the rest of this Congress, this is actually an assault on our Republican majority by Mike Gallagher by intentionally choosing that date. And it's another failure of Mike Johnson to hold him accountable and tell him you are not allowed to leave after that deadline. You must leave before that deadline so that your district can replace you. See, people are not understanding how big this is.
If you're like me and looking to secure your financial future, then I want you to do me a favor. Call my friends at Bishop Gold, 844-984-1616, or go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean and have a conversation with them, or check out the materials on the website, bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean, about how you can add precious metals to your investment strategy. Maybe you have an old 401k, an IRA, or you're just looking to diversify your investment strategy. I called them. I had a conversation about where I am in my financial planning, how we could add financial metals to my strategy, right? So I invested my money with them. You get hit up from a lot of groups all over. I see it every day when I watch TV or I'm online. I trust the people at Bishop Gold Group. They're full of integrity, knowledge about the industry, about investments and strategies. Call them and help them create a strategy that works for you based on the assets that you have. Again, maybe it's an old 401k or an IRA that you have sitting there, that they can help you do it. You can talk to them about holding on to the metals. They can liquidate them for you. They can hold on to them for you. But call Bishop Gold Group 1-844-984-1616 or go to bishopgoldgroup.com/Sean to begin your financial journey with precious metals, and you get a free gift. So Gallagher from Wisconsin, the chair of the House China Committee, announced he wasn't running for re-election. He is announcing that he's leaving the 19th of April. And to your point, if he had just announced that he was leaving 10 days earlier, Wisconsin would have held a special election to replace him. Because it happened 10 days after that deadline, they're screwed until November. I want to get to my second devil's advocate scenario for you to answer. But before I do that, Dan Bongino had a theory yesterday that I want you to respond to because I thought it was interesting. Dan's theory is that the Ken Buck resignation, the congressman from Colorado who's leaving, who's already now left, Bill Johnson from Ohio, he left early to go pursue other interests. And now you've got Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin returning early. Dan Bongino believes that this is a bigger part of a conspiracy theory, if you will, that says Republicans almost want to lose the majority ahead of November so that Hakeem Jeffries will be the speaker going into the November elections. Is that far-fetched, or is there anything to that?
You know, I've heard that theory floated, and I've been seeing it going around social media. And I can't weigh in and say if that's true or untrue. But it's hard to not ignore it, right?
Right.
Ken Buck clearly doesn't support Republicans. I mean, he's proven that over and over again. He voted against impeaching Secretary Mayorkas. Mike Gallagher voted against impeaching Secretary Mayorkas, and then days later announced that he was going to be leaving and not running for re-election. Bill Johnson took a job, I believe, at a college. I can't remember which one it is.
Youngstown State.
Youngstown. Kevin McCarthy resigned and left early after he was ousted as Speaker of the House. So we've had these departures, people leaving early. Seemingly being different reasons. So I don't know how we can tie that into a conspiracy that they're trying to hand the majority over to Hakeem Jeffries. Mike Gallagher, though, that one is questionable.
Yeah.
Mike Gallagher, yeah, it is weird. He took a job with Palantir, I think it's pronounced.
Yeah.
That's a technology company, AI company, a company that's also interested in buying TikTok, which is interesting. And Gallagher, that was his bill, voting on the TikTok ban or the forced sale of TikTok. So that one's pretty interesting. But Gallagher knew what he was doing when he picked his departure date.
I
he
agree.
Intentionally left that seat empty.
All right, so let me get back to my devil's advocate scenario here. The other argument that people who are supporting the outcome that occurred is that, well, we only control, and I get this, we only control one third of the main process, right? So the Democrats control the Senate, Biden's the presidency. I will argue, though, back to what you said. I agree that if you get jammed into a scenario, it's 2 against 1. But where we had the advantage was time, 4 months, as you point out. We could have been isolating the border as an issue, and the American people would have been with us on this. But for those that say, well, Johnson was jammed on this because the Senate wasn't going to go along with anything and the president wasn't going to sign anything, what's the response there?
The response is easy. After Johnson passed the bill on the House floor, the bill went to the Senate on Friday. And we watched the Senate debate the bill. And let me tell you something. Mike Johnson did not allow us to have amendments. Chuck Schumer allowed his senators to have amendments. And then they went to war. That's right. Then they went to war in the Senate as Republican senators were fighting to put the Laken Riley Act into the bill. Republican senators were fighting to put measures of H.R. 2, border security measures, into the bill. Republican senators fought to pull out the abortion funding. They fought to do the many good things that we were denied the ability to do in the House by Mike Johnson. Republicans in the Senate were allowed to do it under Chuck Schumer, but Chuck Schumer knew he had the upper hand. He knew they would lose, so he allowed them to do it. But let me tell you what happened, Sean. They shut down the government because they didn't get it passed before midnight. Democrat senators and Chuck Schumer were so invested to keep that bill intact, just as it was, just as Mike Johnson sent it. They went into the early hours of the morning on Saturday, which essentially was a government shutdown. So Democrats proved they don't care about a government shutdown. They care about getting their agenda passed and getting their way. And they were willing to shut down the government, even if it was for a few hours, in order to make it happen.
You know, it's interesting. You go back to that list that Robert Aderholt put out. Senator Booker, $400,000 for the Garden State Equity Education Fund. Senator Heinrich, Democrat of New Mexico, $780,000 for Amador Health Center LBGTQ services. Senator Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut, $156,000 for the Hartford Gay and Lesbian Collective. Senator Bennett, Colorado, $840,000 for Envision U Colorado, which is an LGBTQ advocacy organization. Senator Satt, Democrat from Hawaii, $550,000 for the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center, LGBTQ services, and syringe exchange. And the list goes on. Senator Schumer, $1 million. All of this for supposedly a bill that funds Homeland Security and the Department of Defense. Their priorities seemed like not shutting it down to support LGBT. I don't understand how that was the main priority, it seemed, for Democrats. Wasn't national security and Homeland Security. It was getting funding for pet projects.
That's right. And making sure that they got them. And they were willing to shut down the government to make sure that those things stayed in the bill. Another thing that's extremely important to point out is Mike Johnson does hold more power than the others in the four corners. He's Speaker of the House, third in line to be President of the United States. That is an extremely powerful position. And if we had a Speaker of the House that understood the power that seat possesses and understands the power of government funding, we could have stopped all of those things in that government funding bill. And I would argue we could have secured the border. That was the one place right now that Republicans absolutely held power, was in the power of the purse. And Mike Johnson surrendered every ounce of that power and did nothing to secure our border. He turned H.R. 2 and the Lake and Riley Act into messaging bills. When you have the majority in the House, our bills should not be messaging bills. They should be passed and forced into law so that we can do the right thing for all Americans.
Your colleague from Kentucky, Congressman Tom Massey, put out a poll on Twitter. He asked people whether they approved or disapproved of Speaker Mike Johnson. Almost 70,000 people have voted, 80% disapproved, 7% approved, 12 have no opinion. You filed this motion to vacate. What do you hope to gain by that? What is the goal? Because explain to viewers what that procedure means and what the next steps would be.
The next steps are this. I filed the motion to vacate, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be voted on the House floor unless I call it up for a vote. And what I started this episode with, Sean, is making sure everyone understands I support the Republican majority. I support the Republican majority so much, I paid all my dues to the NRCC. I'm fighting hard across this country for us to hold the majority next Congress as well. I'm not going to do anything to risk losing that majority, but I am not going to tolerate this to continue. This is what Republican voters are fed up with. And this is why Thomas Massey's poll shows that 80% of nearly 70,000 people that took that poll do not approve of Mike Johnson. And that shows you, I mean, that's essentially almost the same record that Mitch McConnell has. Mitch McConnell only has a 6% approval rating. We can't continue on having Republican leaders that do not support what Republican voters want. And so I entered the motion to vacate. This is a pink slip. Whether it's a few weeks from now that we vote him out, 3 months from now we vote him out, or we essentially say, Mike Johnson, you need to be prepared. You will not be Speaker next Congress if we are able to keep the majority next Congress. That is what I'm saying. But I do promise to everyone, our investigations will continue. Our important committee work will continue. But I'm not going to allow Mike Johnson to be speaker next time. And I'm not alone in the House in saying that. There's other members that agree with me, and we are going to force new leadership for Republicans.
So as you said, this doesn't go to the floor until you pull the trigger, if you will. Mm-hmm. What is that what gets you to that point? What do you need now to either not do it or to do it? Where do you see this thing going?
So I entered this resolution. It's a House resolution that's privileged. I filed it in the hopper on Friday. All I have to do is be recognized on the House floor to speak, and I can call it for a vote. Once I call it for a vote, it takes 2 days. There's 2 days to bring it to the floor for a vote. No one can stop it. The speaker cannot stop it. The Democrats can't stop it. Republicans can't stop it. So if I call it for a vote, it will be voted on within 2 days.
So what's the if? What makes you decide yes or no?
Well, I think I want to see Mike Johnson's reaction, and I want to talk to my other Republican colleagues. You see, I believe that we're a conference. We're a group of members of Congress. Everyone has an equal voice, and everyone's district is equal. Therefore, it requires our conference to choose a new Speaker of the House, and that's extremely important. I'm not interested in the severe division and fighting that has gone on over the past since we actually took Congress. I'm interested in Republicans in the House learning the lesson that needs to be learned, that we cannot continue to legislate this way. We cannot throw away our power. We can't basically swallow a poison pill and then just everybody fly home for Easter and try to pretend like the border invasion isn't happening, and then trying to message and fundraise. Mike Johnson is fundraising over the border right now, which I think is ridiculous. He threw away the power to do anything about it, and he's out fundraising, saying, look at Joe Biden and the border invasion. We have to learn a lesson as Republicans in Congress that while it's difficult to lead the country at this day and time and the serious problems we're in, it takes intestinal fortitude. It takes the willingness to do the hard work. And it's time for us to do the hard work. Otherwise, our country is not going to be the same country we grew up in, Sean, and we already know that full well. But it's going to continue down a road that's going to be something much, much worse. And we're watching those type of things happen to Donald Trump right now. And Americans are so frightened by it. They're frightened by the illegal aliens and criminals that are running across our border every single day. And it's our job to fix it. We have to fix it.
You're with me. I'm with you on this one. I don't get, to me, this is a gift. No party that I've ever seen in modern history has had an issue so clarifying as the impact the border is having on our sovereignty, on our way of life, on our safety, on our economy, as the invasion that we are seeing at the border. And anyone who is dumb enough I get on, why do you think the Democrats are doing this? They've made it clear. They're flying people in. They want a pathway to citizenship. They've spelled it all out. This is about their voters and the future of their party. And we're sitting around playing, tiddlywinks going, well, gosh, maybe we should pass it on Friday. It's like, this is the time to fight for the country, for goodness sake. What was the reaction when you did this from your colleagues? You mentioned Mike Johnson. Did anyone from his team reach out to you?
I haven't heard from Mike Johnson. I haven't heard from his team since then, which is surprising. Everyone can remember watching Kevin McCarthy go directly to Matt Gaetz on the House floor, engaging with him in front of the cameras, in front of the nation, wanting to talk it out with Matt Gaetz and the others who were not supporting him and the others that were wanting to vacate him from the chair. I think that's incredibly important. I haven't heard anything from Mike Johnson. Some of my colleagues are very angry at me. And it's interesting. They should be angry at Mike Johnson that forced them to vote on that bill, took away the right for them to do amendments, took away our right to even read the bill, 1,012 pages. He forced the Cardinals to walk the plank. And now these Republicans that actually did their duty, that they think they have to do, went home to their districts and are probably being completely destroyed and eaten alive for voting for this bill. So anyone that is angry at me, I think their anger is misguided. I'm not going to attack them back. Again, I fully support our conference. I support our majority, but I won't tolerate this anymore. And Sean, I'd like to add on one more thing. I think another video that is rocking people's minds right now is seeing the president of Mexico on 60 Minutes basically threatening the United States, saying that he will not stem the invasion into our country until the United States pays $20 billion a year to poor Latin American countries, takes the sanctions off of Venezuela, removes the Cuban embargo, and makes Mexican illegals in our country citizens.
If they don't do the things that you've said need to be done, then what?
The flow of migrants will continue.
He basically threatened the United States and is demanding a bribe in order to stem the invasion. And Republicans, we had our hands tied behind our backs, and our Republican speaker funded the invasion. This cannot continue. It's outrageous.
Anybody that doesn't see the difference between what's happened domestically and internationally since President Trump left office is blind and mute, because all of these things have happened under Joe Biden's watch. Before I let you go, speaking of videos that have gotten a lot of attention, I told you this in person. I want to play it for the viewers. There are a whole host of people that I think are horrible in the media today. Number one on that list is a former BBC presenter named Emily Maitlis. She grabbed you on a rope line. I want to play the exchange for the viewers and just show how you handle this. Take a look.
Marjorie, thank you so much. The news agents in from London. What do you think the message should be to Nikki Haley tonight?
Well, we've been encouraging her to drop out and support President Trump, and I think tonight is the clear message that President Trump is the clear front runner. He's the winner in our Republican primary, and it's time for Nikki Haley to drop out and support him.
Do you think President Trump, Mr. Trump, is closer to picking his VP, and should you be on that list?
Oh, that's the question everyone asks, and no, I don't think Nikki Haley should be on the list, but of course President Trump will choose who he wants for VP.
Would you like to be on that list?
He's got a long list. I support President Trump in any way he'd ask me. But I can assure you it won't be Nikki Haley.
And can you tell me why so many people that support Donald Trump love conspiracy theories, including yourself? He seems to attract lots of conspiracy theorists.
Well, let me tell you, you're a conspiracy theorist, and the left and the media spreads more conspiracy theories. We like the truth. We like supporting our Constitution, our freedoms, and America first. So
what about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space lasers.
No, why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you off? How about that?
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Oh, God, I could watch that over and over all day long. I mean, God bless you for sticking with it. But this is the problem with so much of the media, and you just exemplified how we need to just, anyway, I told you then, I have a dark place in my heart for that woman, and I wish I had said what you said. So I'll let you respond. Otherwise, I know you've had a busy day, and I just had to show people how you handled that.
Well, thank you, Sean. And you of all people know better than anyone what it's like to be just completely under the pressure of the press. Being White House press secretary, oh my gosh, I don't know how you did that job.
Well, I wish I could have said what you said. All right, Congressman, thanks for being with us. I appreciate how generous you've been with your time. Keep fighting the good fight, and let's get these Republicans to understand the importance of border security and this issue that we could be rallying around until we get a president back who will focus on it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sean.
You bet. All right. She brings it every time, doesn't she? I get her point. Why are we not fighting? Why are we caving? I read you that list of everything that the Dems got, right? All the Dem senators got their LGBTQ funding money. They fought for that. Why aren't we fighting for the border? Something that actually is in the national interest. Those things are all pedestrian things that help their state. I don't understand why they're federal government priorities. But that's a side note. But fighting for the border is something that cares all of us, protects all of us, helps all of us in terms of safety, all of us in terms of our economy. And yet, where was that fight? We need people that are willing to fight. I don't agree with everything that any of these people do. But at the end of the day, this is something that should get everybody on board. As I said, later this week, we've got Michael Watley, the new chairman of the RNC. He's going to be here. Chicks on the Right, they're going to be here. We've got a great week lined up. A lot of interesting topics, a lot of great things. Please continue to subscribe. It's so super helpful. YouTube, Rumble, Apple, Spotify. I don't care where else you go, but all of those platforms would be super helpful just to hit that button. I appreciate everything you guys are doing to help this show grow. Thank you for your support. We will see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.